All right, looks like we're live on Facebook and YouTube. And our stream looks a little better too, so that's good. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to another City Updates live broadcast. I'm Jamie Chavez, your host with the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, and we're thrilled to have you with us today. As always, we're here to bring you the latest insights straight from City Hall, featuring conversations with our councilor, mayor, and our mayor pro tem. It is your backstage pass to what's happening in our vibrant city. We usually do these broadcasts on Monday, but today it's obviously Wednesday, and we're here with Councilor Dave DeMott. So thank you for joining us today. If this is your first time joining us on the broadcast, a special welcome to you. Thanks for being here. For the Facebook viewers, you can like and follow this page for future notifications. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit subscribe, and you can also explore previous broadcasts there. As you watch the broadcast this morning, please feel free to engage with us. Don't be shy. Drop your comments, ask questions, or just simply say hello, and we will get to those comments during the interview. So we've got a couple people joining us. Again, thank you for being here, Councilor DeMott. And we've got some people saying hi. Good morning, Brian. And good morning, Brian Dice. How are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of dive right in and let you know some of the stuff that's been going on. So if you pay attention to what's going on in Westminster, probably one of the number one topics that we've heard about recently is the Westminster Hills Dog Park. And I don't know if you saw, I shared some links with you. So if you want to share those as I talk, that'd be cool. But there is a Westminster Hills Dog Park. If you go to Westminster co.gov/WHOS is the website. And so on that website, you can see kind of what's the latest. They did have another community input meeting last week on Wednesday. I was not able to attend, but from my understanding, it was very well attended. Kind of the next steps are they're going to have what they're calling these CAT groups, their community advisory team. And they're taking applications for that right now. And what we were told on Monday, the goal of that will be to kind of talk both with the staff and the community about ideas of kind of what the path forward for the Westminster Hills Dog Park is going to be. So, and then ultimately my understanding is those recommendations will be looked at and brought back to council ultimately at some point. So I wanted to give folks an update on that because that's certainly being in Colorado, people love their dogs, and that's a nice amenity that we have. And so, some of those changes proposed have not been well received by everybody. So looks like they're going to kind of evaluate and see what the right path forward is. So any questions on that from you before, and then I'll kind of just keep going if you're cool with that.
Yeah, keep going.
Perfect. We also have a community advisory team for the new court. So if you're familiar with the fact that we approved a new municipal court, our current court is in what was originally a city hall building, then it was a police station, and it's about 60 years old. I believe it's the oldest building that we have as a city facility. And so it was never purpose built for a court. And so that's brought some challenges over the years. And so council did approve for us to move forward with building a new court. And so part of that process designed the new court is this community advisory team that and I am the liaison to that group. And so our first meeting was a couple weeks ago, and we kind of just talked to the community about like kind of look and feel at the outside of the buildings and like what really they thought would fit the city. And then, also ask questions around what kind of challenges or concerns do they think the citizens will have as they go through construction of the building. So that process will continue. I know they scheduled our next meeting. I'm not sure when that is. Those aren't currently public meetings, I know that I specifically had brought up about, wanting to figure out a way with these, if we're not going to allow public into these community advisory teams, for people to at least be able to review them. And so that was an ask of staff, both going forward with the Westminster Hills CAT as well as the court CAT. And there's another one that Councilor Carmelia is the liaison to for our new water plant. So, I just advocated, and it sounded like the majority of council agreed it would be nice to allow people to at least hear those meetings so that they can hear, understand, and potentially give feedback to folks who are involved, or to council. So then moving on, the other things that I am the liaison to is the Rocky Mountain Airport Community Noise Roundtable, if you're familiar with that. And that's basically a body of people from different municipalities or counties that are in the affected area of what the FAA considers the affected area. And the FAA provides this as a mechanism for us to basically talk about issues with noise from airports. And so we had a meeting last week. In that meeting, there's been, over the last year, each of the groups inside that noise roundtable had participated in funds in order to hire a consultant and bring those some recommendations for some risk or noise mitigation efforts. So we finally got our report back from our consultants last week. And the way that these community noise roundtables work is if one member of the body says they don't like a recommendation from the board, then it doesn't happen. And so those results were on their way to go to the FAA for the FAA to look at the recommendations and decide whether or not they would approve of them. And then it would have been up to discussion of the noise roundtable to say if we wanted to try any of those recommendations. But there was a move from Boulder County to basically say they wouldn't approve of any. So it basically died. So all that work is out the window. So since then, I've heard that there's some lawsuits being filed from Superior and Boulder against Jefferson County. I won't speak to anything more than I know that happened. And I don't know, what the court will see. I don't fully, I've seen the filing, but, I'm no attorney, so I'll just leave it at that. And people can go do some research on that if they're interested. So one of the other topics around the airport that has certainly been in conversation is the fact that there are still airplanes, pretty much the piston-driven small prop planes that still use leaded fuel. This is something that the feds are looking at, and there is a timeline. I think it's 2030 for us to move totally off of leaded fuel. That's a big process for that to happen. Jefferson County Airport this last year bought a fuel truck to be able to start offering unleaded fuel ahead of the date that they're going to be required to. So they're trying to move ahead of that. In the last CNR meeting, they also mentioned that they were buying tanks for that, because you got to have the tanks and the way to move the fuel in order to sell the fuel. So they're still in that process. But with that, one of the, us as a community, Westminster had been asked to address the concerns about the leaded fuel. So we did have an expert from the CDPHE and some of their staff come in and just talk about some results of some tests specifically around airports and what those blood levels look like in terms of lead. And so I gave you a link to that too, if you'd share it with folks to be able to go and listen to that YouTube meeting. It was back on March 4th. So if you go listen to the YouTube recording of the March 4th study session, you can hear the presentation and the questions from the counselors with CDPHE. I thought it was an excellent presentation. There's obviously 7 opinions when it comes to what council thinks about things, but I super appreciate the fact that they took the time to come and meet with us, because that's something that we had been trying to get them to come talk to us since before this current counselor was seated back at the end of the last election cycle. So worthwhile conversation if folks want to go listen to that. Moving into this next week, we do have a study session this next week. And on that study session, sorry, I meant to have this pulled up and I closed that window. We're going to have a presentation around the downtown Center Park that is part of the Westminster Downtown Plan. We have a concept plan review, and then we have some discussions around our boards and commissions appointments. Council has, for the last couple of years, been trying to figure out, what's the most effective way to get those boards and commissions that council appoints filled. And, so some of the, if you're not familiar, we have things like tonight, I am the liaison to the inclusivity board. That group of citizens work on things to make sure, the city is as inclusive as possible. We have an environmental advisory board that is citizen filled. We have planning commission that actually review their what's considered quasi judicial. They actually review plans that before they come to city council, like new developments. There's a special permits and licensing. Their primary thing that they do is like liquor licenses. So all these boards and commissions help council do work. And so over the last handful of years, we've had less applicants, but there's still no shortage of need for people to fill these positions. So we're looking at ways to both make sure that people know about the opportunities, but also it's efficient in the ways that we actually are able to fill those boards and make sure we get them filled so that we can have them help us out. And then the other couple things that I wanted to bring up with your viewers is St. Baldrick's is going to be on the 24th. And so what St. Baldrick's, the city has a team. And if you share that link, it's basically where you can go support that team. So St. Baldrick's is a group that works to raise money to fight childhood cancer. The city has been doing this for, I think, well over 10 years. And so it's a great opportunity to go out and put your dollars behind cancer research. And so basically what they do is there's a team of people from the city that grow their hair out and dye it crazy colors, and then they go and get their head shaved to raise money for childhood cancer. So good event. I think it's at the Yacht Club Salon on the 24th between 11 and 12:30, and that's right over off of 92nd, but in front of Costco. On the 13th of April, City Council will be going into their strat plan. So that strat plan is basically our strategic planning for, the upcoming year. And so with new council people coming on and the current council people, we basically get to say, what does the majority think the priorities that the city should be focused on when it comes to our public policies and what the city does for its residents. And so I expect that to be a good discussion. We have 3 people who are new to council as of November, so they'll be able to bring their ideas, and we'll be able to talk about what we think the right thing for staff to be spending their time and your tax dollars on. And then the last thing, as far as the city thing I wanted to bring up, is on 420 is the Great Global Cleanup. And I shared a link with you on that as well, where people can go and participate in that big event. And so it's basically groups from around the community. Say you have a Boy Scout troop or just your neighborhood and you want to volunteer to clean up an area, the city will provide bags. They'll come pick them up after your cleanup. And then we have kind of a big barbecue at the end of it, but you can find out more about that on the city website. And then I wanted to at least mention, because we're supposed to be getting a giant snowstorm, I hear. And so if folks are interested around our plows work, I wanted to share the link on that. So if you go to westminsterco.gov/snow removal, you can see like a live view of where our snow plows are at any given time, as well as kind of understand what roads that we plow and which ones we don't. And there's like different levers. So like if it's a light snowstorm, maybe we plow just the main roads. And that's a combination between what we plow and what CDOT plows, what's, a city road versus the state road. But then inside the neighborhoods, there is a certain threshold before we would plow those streets. And so you can find out more about kind of what that looks like on that website. And the other thing that you can see on that website is, back to volunteers in the city, we have a program called Snowbusters. And so whether it's elderly or people who are disabled that need somebody to help shovel snow, that's a program that either you can participate in as somebody who needs help, or if you want to go help some other people, there's more information about that program on that site. So good program. We have a lot of great volunteers in the city. And that's just one of the many different things that the city provides and helps facilitate for residents and people who want to volunteer. Last event that I have that I wanted to share is, so since before I was elected, I've always done a town hall. when I decided that this was a realm I wanted to spend some of my time in. And so once a month we meet at Cocopelli Beer Company over off of 88th and Harlan. And this week or this month, it'll be on the 21st. This year, we're doing the third Thursday of every month, and we meet at 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And so it's just an opportunity for you to come and talk to both community members and neighbors and me and just talk about what's going on in the city. I try to address any concerns that you might have, and I'll do my best to answer your questions, or at least give my perspective on it, understanding I'm just one council member. Routinely, you'll also see the mayor there. She enjoys coming to visit those since before she came back as the mayor and has continued on, and I always appreciate her presence. So great opportunity to just come and be with other community members. And so hopefully we will see folks out there on the 21st. So I'll stop talking and let you ask any questions, or if your viewers have any questions.
Yeah, I'll open it up for anybody. Please go ahead and type your questions in the chat. And I'll go ahead and start. I'm curious, just looking ahead, what maybe some of your long-term goals or visions are for City Council and what you hope to achieve for the city.
So for me, one of the things that I've been very adamant about is water rates. And so if you followed me and my, call it my journey here on City Council, I initially got involved because what happened with Jessica Ridgway, who was a good friend of my daughter's. And so my wife and I were just really looking for something to do to positively impact our community. But as I got into it and started watching, things closer, I was not happy with what they were doing with water rates. And so for me, I'm in my 6th year, and I'm happy to say that we actually did do something about that. We decreased water rates. We changed the way our tier system is addressed. One of my asks in the, as we go forward with the water plant, as we approve that, one of the things was about having a ceiling for what water rates would be from year to year. Because every year our costs go up, our expenses go up. Inflation's a real thing that we have no control over. And so with that being said, the pro forma that they laid out was basically 4.5% increases over 10 years while we fund that new water plant. To me, that was always a ceiling, and I was very adamant about that. And so last year when we came back with, here's 4.5%, I started a conversation about how could we make that less, because, our residents are still going through the same financial impacts of the way the economy is that, anybody is. And so I had set a path forward to staff to say, I would like I'll go along with it this year after some pretty rigorous debate. But I asked this next year that we look at what it would look like to make sure that we're not always hitting that 4.5% over the next 10 years. That's been something that I, just adamant about, and looking at, there's always gives and takes, but, what programs could we pull out in order to not have to hit 4.5% every year over the next 10 years. So that's a big thing for me. A couple other things that are just like little projects that I've heard about from the community. I've been talking a lot with staff and pushing that we get our disc golf course back. Our disc golf course was taken out when they were doing some upgrades in the open space around one of our interceptors. And so at the time that happened, the word that was put forward to us was that was going to get put back in some form or fashion, and the community would be happier with what they put back. So far, that hasn't happened. And, I know that's a certain niche community, but I would like to see that come back, because that's what I was told, and that's what I presented to the community when that happened. So that's another area where I want to, continue to work with the community to best help them out. So moving forward, those are some of the things that I would like to do, is just kind of continue on the same good work that I think that we've done over my 6 years. We've done a lot of changes in public safety. One of my big things in my re-election was, our staffing levels of the police department, between hiring a city manager and him seating different people, and some of the things that we've done, such as giving our police officers collective bargaining, we actually are at a pretty good staff level now. And if you think in terms of what city government does, we're, police, fire, streets, water. Those are the things that you expect us to do. You want to be able to get clean, safe water when you turn on your tap. You want to be able to afford that water. You want somebody to show up when you pick up the phone and call 911. So I really just want to continue the great work that I think that we've done in my time Some other things like the co-responders, for example, that are mental health professionals that are working with our police and starting to work with fire and our open space folks that deal with homeless situation. There's just a lot of good work that's been done in the last 6 years, and I hope that the new council, that as we go into strategic planning, we continue to double down on some of that stuff that benefits the community.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's definitely nice having your experience on the council still as one of the more tenured councilors at this point. I think you have so much to offer.
I don't know how that happened. I remember it seems like it was yesterday. I was the rookie. Now all of a sudden I'm 6 years in, kind of the historian. So
yeah, well, things do pop up that you've dealt with before, and so it's nice that you have that experience and you can bring that into the discussion. So I did get a text message question from a viewer wanting to know more about the Rocky Flats bike trail.
So there was an ask about what we were doing with that trail. So that trail is bigger than Westminster by all means. I feel like that was probably if I remember right, I think that Congressman Perlmutter had a lot to do with funding that, but don't you might want to look into that. But it just seems that that was during his tenure, and that bike trail basically goes from the Rocky Mountain Arsenal all the way through the Rocky Flats Wildlife Refuge. And so there's been question about whether or not that should happen, which I will tell you that from what we were explained this week, the bike path is there. Westminster's part of it is we have an IGA that basically helps put a bridge in place. And so we, with some of our community partners, helped fund that bridge. What they shared with us was that bridge was already being built. It's already contracted. And so that work moves forward. The reason that that's important as far as, what was put forward to us is people have to cross Indiana to get from one side of that path that already exists to the other side of the path. If you're familiar with Rocky Flats, that was where they used to make parts of nuclear bombs. And so that is no longer there. There has been some level of cleanup, and that's a much bigger conversation than we can have in a half an hour as far as, what that looks like and the history of that. But there's certainly some folks that don't feel that there should be a bike path there. But Westminster's part of that is, we helped with the bridge that was going to get people from across Indiana, which crossing Indiana without a bridge seems like a dangerous endeavor. Certainly not something I would do. And, I think it's a fair conversation to have around Rocky Flats and whether people should be out there or not. And people are going to have to make up their own mind about that, because it is a thing that is there, and there is a trail there. And so, I grew up in this community right next to Rocky Flats, and I'll tell you, being a kid, my dad being a Denver police officer was one of the few parents in the neighborhood who didn't work at Rocky Flats, because this neighborhood over in Countryside area, that was a huge job provider over here. A lot of people worked up at the Flats. It was kind of its own little city up there. So that's kind of where it's at. And city council had asked for them to come back and kind of give us some more answers around our questions about it, where it's at, what's next, what options there are or aren't if we wanted to change direction on that. So it was originally, the IGA was originally in 2016, which was before my time. There was some reallocation of money back in 2021, I think February 2021. That was basically, I don't remember if it was dispersing the funds or what it was, but certainly a conversation that got kind of spun up recently, as far as people, now that we're getting closer to that, really wanting to give their opinion whether or not that was a good idea.
All right, thank you. And then one last question. We have just a minute or two here. I don't think I asked you this last time, but what is your favorite thing about Westminster?
Oh, for sure, the people. I grew up here, and so the amount of people that either are kind of like me, that either stayed here or like moved away for college and came back here. It's a lot of the same folks I grew up with. But I'll tell you, my favorite thing campaigning is going to doors and just talking to people in this community. And if you look at like our volunteer program, how many people donate their time and energy for free and help offset needs of this community is astounding. And so we just have a fantastic community, and there's a lot of great people in this city. And so I just really enjoy the fact that I get to be, part of this community.
That's great. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions, and it's 11:30, so I'll respect your time. But thank you so much for being on here with us again, and stay safe in the giant snowstorm that's coming.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you, Jamie. We'll talk to
have
you
a good day.
soon.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.